We are going to do a bit of deep dive into bracket placement and sort of the techniques or the methodology, the philosophy behind what we're doing in the software. I like that we get pushback from doctors. There's doctors that doubt it, and they should, and you should be skeptical. But I also ask that you have a little bit of an open mind as I present some of these things that we're going to talk about today. Because as we know, in orthodontics, placement of bracket is quite key. So let's jump in here. If I can get my slides to work. One more click. There we go. So if I could just, let's set the table. Let's have a little bit of a foundation to set, and then we're going to dive into the software and show various examples. But I want to make a case. And now you got to be careful in claims. I think in orthodontics, and some of you might be jaded, is there's just so many claims, and it's going to solve world hunger and have world peace. And you know, there's a lot of companies claiming a lot of things. These are claims. You don't have to believe these, but there's ways to verify them. So this first one here, this is kind of what I think Ryan hit quite often. That first one there, 50% shorter bonding appointments, that one's pretty, I mean, at this point, we've done so many thousands and tens of thousands of cases. We know that is the case, that your bonding appointments, that's one of the benefits to going to a digital setup, digital workflow, digital IDB. There's various ways you can call this. But it really does speed up those bonding appointments. We've got hundreds and hundreds of doctors that use this, and that's what they report back. If you're a user and it's actually taking you longer, please call us. We have a fantastic staff that love to troubleshoot with you and get this working properly. But shorter bonding appointments, fewer repos, less wire bends. To what degree? There's so many variables, it's hard to put numbers to that. But that's our claim, our kind of high-level claim, is bonding appointments, fewer repos, less wire bending. These next 6, these are actually from someone I have a lot of respect for. I don't know if she's on the call, but Dr. Lisa Alvitro. This was actually a recent video she did with the AAO and Tech Select. These were her lists. She mentioned the ones that first bullet point, but these next 6 that I show you, these are from Dr. Alvitro. Yeah, better, more accurate positioning. That's, again, the main topic today, is the positioning of the brackets. What we call a predicted outcome in our software, that really is the ability to see in the future. And again, that's something that Lisa, or Dr. Alvitro, really likes. She likes to have, her case set up on the screen with her images, her x-ray. If you have CBCT, I can show that in the software as well. That's next level sort of stuff to be able to see those roots, and really helps with TIP in particular. Compare treatment plans. That's something we can get into. And then, treatment planning versus clinical aspects. She talks quite a bit of that on her video. I need to send you a link. I should have had that link in here. And then she mentioned this too, where if you have a practice with multiple doctors, it does help with standardizing your care. Okay, so these are our claims. But on that second bullet point, bracket positioning, if some of you use DIBS, we get some pushback like, wow, is this really accurate? So this is nothing new, though, when it comes to bracket placement. There have been competing philosophies, go back 100 years ago, back to the turn of the century with Dr. Engel and his groundbreaking work, to Andrews, up through the MBT with McLaughlin and Bennett. And that last one there, FA points actually is Andrews. The other ones there, Roth, Alexander, MBT, all these various ones, Smile Arcs, you really are looking at, you want precise measurements from the incisal to the center of the slot. That's a big portion of what we're going to talk about right now, because that's where we get pushback. Is we'll hear that the brackets, when they're bonded, they look too incisal. If you're on that upper arch, they look too low. So we're going to talk about that. I want to start with this, though, methodologies and assumptions, because again, this is that foundation that I want to set with everybody. But yeah, this all comes back to, we want to increase your efficiency. How do we do that? Well, we want to provide a digital environment that helps get that really great, accurate placement of your brackets. So behind the scenes, what the software is doing, we really rely heavily on Andrews. And I love the ABO. ABO is not what it used to be, but their scoring system for your finishing cases, we've loved that because that's what we've built into the software. And with our AI is before we stick on a single bracket, we're trying to get a good generalized setup based on Andrew's 6 keys and then put a score to those 6 keys. And then from there, it is, if you can see the end in the very beginning, it's very powerful. That goes back to what Dr. Alvitro was talking about and what I'm going to show you. So once we have that, we have our foundation with Andrews. We then do a setup where we, at the end of treatment, we get the teeth set up. Like, don't worry about brackets. You just get the teeth where you want them aligned and in the proper occlusion. Once you have that, then you place the brackets. And that's what we're doing on our side. So there's a lot of segmentating the teeth, and the AI helps with all that. Our technicians spend maybe 12 to 15 minutes to do a basic setup, and they end with placing the brackets. From there, they'll do some adjusting. They'll look for some issues if need be, but then it comes to you, the orthodontist, and that's where it gets into order of operations. And we'll get more into this as we get further into our presentation. But again, it comes back to Andrew's 6 keys. Checking the inclination, angulation, rotation, all those things that Andrews talks about. You want to be checking that in terms of your bracket positions. That was methodology. This is more our assumptions. We need a good quality scan. Of that 12 to 15 minutes, our staff, our technicians are spending a fair amount of time cleaning up the scans. And we understand how difficult it is to scan back there, particularly in the posteriors, beyond the 7s. But the better the scan we can get, the better results we can get, particularly with the tray. It's difficult for us to generate an IDB tray digitally if we've got a pretty rough scan. So before we can do any work, we have to do a lot of cleanup. And the less cleanup, the quicker we can get these setups back to you for approval. Oh, I got to hit my button so you can see that. So there you go. Quality scans. The other assumption is we really need to know which brackets you're using and what's your finishing wires, what's the size, and what's the form. If we don't have that, again, what the software is showing you and that predicted outcome can be wrong. And again, we are assuming that you want to go by Andrews, that you want to flatten the curve of speed, that things are going to be in a class 1 bite, because all that affects the placement of the brackets. And then the assumption is you're not assuming that we've done a perfect job. Every doctor's different, that you have your different preferences, and it's not just approving it with a rubber stamp. The expectation is to get in there and to check things, and that I'm going to show that to you here directly within the software. And then clinical procedures. We are assuming that you're following the clinical procedures that we provide you, and we do a lot of training on this. We do a lot of onboarding. Again, we have a really good staff that want to help you if there's any issues or problems. Okay, so that's our methodology. Now that's our assumption. If those are correct, we can move on from there. And I want to start here. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. If you do a little research on it, you know that it's leaning just under 4 degrees, as you can see there. Its high point 185, its low point 183. The little trivia question for you is, what is that height if it had never had that little lean? And there's your answer. It's 196 feet. Now, why do I share this with you? If you kind of imagine that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is, let's say, a central tooth. We'll take your upper right central. And if that thing's standing straight up and down, its length is always its length, right? The tower here is always 196 feet. But if you start to incline it, if you change its torque angle, to use our orthodontic term, then it can shorten it if you continue to measure perpendicular to the tower. This is pretty key in why we have doctors say, hey, these look a little bit lower, because it depends on the final inclination of the tooth. So let me show you a couple more slides here. This little guy, I think he's having a kind of a rough day. But this is a good illustration. If you notice his pivot point, it's off screen, but the pivot point would be above where the ropes are probably connected to a tree. So from the pivot point of the tree down to the ground, that measurement never changes. But as he swings and he's down where his head hits the water in that pond, that's going to be the lowest position of his head. And as he swings up, that measurement's going to decrease. So let me show this. Oops, let's go back one. So this image here, the tooth on the left, it's pretty much kind of sitting straight up and down. But if you measure from the pad to the incisal edge, it's 3.3. Now the tooth on the right, it's got some inclination built into because of the prescription of the bracket. You can see that it's 4.8. And here's the crazy thing. If you measure, get my cursor on here. Hopefully you guys can see my cursor. If you measure from the center of the slot down to the incisal edge, it's still on this particular case, it was 4.5. And yet if you measure from the pad or the base to the incisal edge, it's 3.3. And then over here on the right, again, you're measuring from the center of the slot to the incisal edge, it's still 4.4. And yet if you measure from the base, it's 2.8. Why the discrepancy? Because that's your pivot point. It's like the swing. If you kind of visualize this, this bracket as a swing, and it kind of swings back and forth, then the pivot point is always the same distance to the ground or from the slot to the incisal edge. That number doesn't change, but the angle of the bracket does change, and that can be defined by the final inclination of the tooth. So I'm going to show you some examples of this. But what I'm trying to share with you here is that behind the scenes, our software is looking at a lot of factors. We are looking at what is the prescription of the bracket? What is the slot size of the bracket? What is the finishing size? So is it a 1925 slot with an 022 slot with a 1925 finishing wire? If we have all those parameters, and then you put in with that our mechanics, and we've spent 10 years on this. I hate to use that word expert. I don't consider my expert in anything other than making my wife upset sometimes. But with this in DIBS, we've spent a lot of time, consulted with a lot of orthodontists, worked with some really good developers. Our main developer, he has a PhD in robotics. And we've really done a deep dive on the mechanics and the physics and making sure that our predicted outcome is accurate. And so this is a hard concept maybe to grasp, but when you look at all these things, we can determine what the final torque of the tooth is. Once you know the final torque of the tooth, and you know slot size and prescription and wire size, now you can predict extremely accurately the height of that bracket. So again, this is a really cool illustration of these two teeth, because we have orthodontists that say, well, they look too incisal. That's because when you are bonding directly to the patient, you're kind of looking perpendicular to where the tooth is, not where the tooth is going to be. So that's my key takeaway here. If you take all the aspects that our software is using and you get that tooth and its final inclination based on torque and the prescription and the wire, now you know what the height's going to be. So that is a true 4.5 millimeters. I'm not saying that's where you want your bracket is 4.5 millimeters, but you can trust those numbers in the software. All right, let's do some illustrations here. If you look here on the left, watch those brackets jump up and down, because I'm basically illustrating two types of how you place your brackets. If you measure perpendicular to where the teeth are now, it's going to look one way. If you measure perpendicular where the teeth are going to end up based on prescription torque and the wire size, that's the difference between those two. So let's go to the next example. This is kind of zooming in. So on the left, that's the angle of the tooth before treatment is started, so pre-treatment. And you can see there, it's at a weird angle, but I am perpendicular to where that tooth is now. And so you can see over there on the right side, okay, well, based on that, that's where the tooth's going to end up. But let me kind of switch back and forth. Instead of being perpendicular to where the tooth started, let's calculate and figure out where that tooth is going to be at the end of treatment. And you see the jump, see how, I mean, that's over, that's about a 0.5 millimeter jump right there. All right, one more here. Now, how do we do this? So how do we know that these angles are right? I said that we take into consideration the slot size and the finishing wire. So look at this here. I've got a 16 by 16. I think this is an 018 slot. If you notice, as I move up and down, and now I'm simulating, of course, you're not going to put the bracket on some of these weird heights. But the point is, as I change the position of the bracket, you can see it pivoting around the arch wire, because the arch wire, there's slop in there. So you would normally want to see that bracket sort of pivoting around the arch wire. Now here I filled the slot completely. Now look at that. No matter what angle, that's totally changed the inclination of that tooth. So that's kind of built into DIBS. You don't have to worry about it. It just works. It's doing it right. Next slide here. Same concept. I purposely put in a really small wire. And so this is what you're looking at, that offset between the buccal lingual. You've got about a 0.5 millimeter offset, and that's perfectly fine. So basically there's not going to be any sort of forces happening between that wire and slot. And so that torque is going to stay the same. Now let me run the video here. I'm going to switch and fill that slot. And now you can, in this case, I mean, these are sort of stock brackets, but by filling the slot, which you don't always want to do, I'm not saying fill the slot. I know you want that play in there. You want some slop. But that, what I'm trying to show you there is that the software is very good at predicting where the ultimate torque of each tooth is going to be. If that, back to those assumptions, if we have the right bracket, we know that that's what you're going to be using, and we know the finishing wire, we can predict where the torque is going to end up. And that's, once you know that, that's what you should be measuring by, not where the teeth are now, but where the teeth are going to be. Okay, I think I've beat the proverbial horse on this long enough, but still have another slide for you. So we're just switching back and forth, and we can animate that. Now, notice where it stops. It doesn't completely incorporate the full prescription of this bracket. It's not completely using all the torque because we didn't fill the slot. So that's where you, again, that predictive control that you have within DIBS is pretty neat. We know that's where that tooth is going to end up, so we know that height is going to be correct. Okay. All right. I like this quote. Got this off the internet. Our good friends, Dr. McLaughlin and Dr. Bennett. Any philosophy claiming to be comprehensive, you need quality brackets, know what the wires are, full information of the arch form and force levels. That's the reason why I like this quote, is because we've worked actually a couple years on this to make sure we are predicting the forces correctly between the slot and the wire. Okay. I want to give you a demonstration now. Let's go into the DIBS software. So right here, I want to give you a quick height demo. I don't know how many doctors know about this in our software. Ryan, let me know if, I'm assuming you can see all this. Ryan, will you unmute? Can you also see my mouse? I want to make sure you can see my mouse maybe. Okay, yep. Thank you.
See everything, it looks great.
So our default, when we send you a case, let's just get rid of everything here. I can turn off brackets, wires, margin ridges, even those long axis lines. If you look up here, let's go just 3 to 3 on the upper. We're 4.5, 4, 4.5. Every doctor in the world, I mean, some doctors like that as a beginning point, or maybe they like those heights, but you can change that. So my first point is it's deadly accurate in terms of the height it says. So even if we have doctors like, oh, it looks too incisal. We know why now, right? Is because you guys are used to looking at it correctly from pre-treatment. We're looking at it post-treatment, and there could be changes in torque, and so that could lower it. The more it's inclined, the lower that bracket's going to look, even though the height's still correct. But regardless, you can still come in here and change heights, right? I can hold down my shift key and I can move those up and down. What I want to show you that I think is underutilized in the software is over here, this little thing called preset heights. In fact, I want to turn back on my brackets for this. And I like those little, those contour lines show the long axis and show the slot there horizontally. But over here on the left, you have this little, this thing called preset heights. You have to take a little bit of time to create these. And what I've done here is I've got several different options. I wanted to make some others. So these will all affect just my upper teeth, but you can make as large a library of preset heights and then test them and see what they look like. So we know, so I have here 4.5, 4, 4.5. That's just representing those 3 to 3, right? So let's change that to say 5.5, 5, 5.5. So I click that and I click load, and we'll see the result. You can now see how much more gingival those brackets are. A little hack for you guys, or a little tips and trick. Up here you have undo, redo. So I can undo it. That's where it was. I can redo it, and I can go back and forth and see which one I like. And if you don't like any of those, and if you have other ones in your sort of height library, say, no, that one looks a little bit too high. Or maybe you want to do a smile arc. Let's go to, say, a 4.5, 4.5, and 5, or even let's do a 4.5, 5, and 6. Let's load that. So I know we have a lot of doctors that are going kind of tooth by tooth, bracket by bracket, and readjusting the heights. My suggestion is do that once and then save it. Save it here under the preset heights. Now, we're going to get in the weeds here a little bit. If you're going to create your height library, be sure, if you don't want to mess with posteriors, right, you want to come in here and, so to pick a case that you just want to test on, you're not necessarily going to save it. But let's say we delete those brackets. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just using my shift key and deleting those. Now you can go through and build your height library. Because if you keep those posterior brackets, it's going to save that. So you go to a new case, it's going to also change to whatever those heights were on your back molars and bicuspids. Okay. Here's your kind of tip of the day to speed up your setups. So yeah, I'm just hitting that undo, redo, and I can see, well, I messed with deleting those brackets. I should have done that first. That's really helpful to kind of be able to go back and forth and see different height measurements. Okay, let's come back into slides here for just a second. So number one, yeah, that whole, boy, I spent too many minutes on that, Ryan. I spent 30 minutes on, but that was a big thing to hopefully give you some confidence and understanding how precise it is in its measurements. If we've got that established, let's now look at tip and rotation. And what I want to get into is what's just the quickest, easiest approval you can do. I mean, there's layers of this thing. It's like an ogre and an onion. There's a lot of layers to it, but let's just start kind of simple. And I want to share that with you. So one thing in our software, particularly with posterior placement of brackets, we rely heavily on the marginal ridges, right? So let's say this is your case, right? You get this and you need to approve it. And let's keep it easy. Let's just go back to pre-treatment, and here it is. You can turn on your marginal ridges. Now there's a keyboard shortcut that's just M, but under show hide, I think that's where you can also turn on marginal ridges. Oh no, it's over here on this side. You can turn them on and off under customize. And what you want to do is come to the maxillary, and let's get a top view. So you're looking straight down on that. This would be the very first thing for a nice, quick, easy approval. Marginal ridges are hard for AI to figure out exactly where to put them. So that's one thing our technicians do, is they try to realign them. And I've learned that this one's a little bit ambiguous because I've talked to different orthodontists that like these placed in different areas. Some orthodontists want them right down there on the bottom of the central groove. Other orthodontists want them a little bit higher up. So whatever your preference, you can change it. But the key thing is they're consistent. So this is more how we do it down at the central groove. You can move those up. But I'm saying if they're all consistent where they're placed, then you can use them where they are. Now, if you see something though that is out of place, maybe the AI missed it and the technicians missed it, go ahead and fix that and get it down where you want it. So that's step one. Let's get the marginal ridges looking good on both the upper and the lowers. Now that those marginal ridges are in place, let's go ahead and look at your tips and rotations. So ideally, obviously, you want that slot to be parallel to that marginal ridge. That's really helpful. You can't do that when you're direct bonding, and you're kind of eyeballing it if you're doing old school IDB with the pencil marks. This is so much quicker to be able to come in here and just change the tip and get it where you want. So there's you can go around and the other where we really need help, particularly is on the molars. We don't have access to your panos. And so we definitely want you to, again, check the tip of all the teeth and make sure they look good to you. And then in terms of rotations, you come back here and get those wherever you want. Hopefully we get you guys really close. But like I say, no two orthodontists are going to agree on the positioning of a bracket. So we want to get you close. We want to get you 80, 90% of the way there. And then you can come in and do some adjusting here in the existing or the pre-treatment model. Okay, so you've checked your marginal ridges, you've checked your rotation and your tip. Now we come back to leveling. This again, I know some doctors, they have a really powerful eye. Go ahead and eyeball that if you want to move those up and down and get them where you want. But this is where I would suggest, at least when it comes to leveling, and these are, again, all layers, you can do side by side, by the way, which I love. You can do the leveling here. And reason why this is really powerful, again, looking into the future, let's just focus on this. I'm going to turn on my grid and really zoom in on here. So if this is our occlusal plane, this red line, those are all the 4.5s, and they're spot on. But again, if you want to change it, you can, but use this line, use this grid, and get them however you want. Again, we could go back into our height presets, and let's go back to that smile arc and load that. And then you can compare that on that occlusal plane of that red line and make adjustments from there. You can click these two and say, it's a little too low. I'm going to bring those up a little bit. I'll select those laterals and maybe bring them down a little bit more. And this is where you get to be your artist. So there's a lot of science behind this, but you guys are great at designing the smiles, and this is where that comes in. Okay, that is it. This is a quick, easy way. The doctors that do this method are in and out within 5 minutes, if that. You're just checking those rotations of the marginal ridges. You're then, if you need to, correct the rotations of the brackets themselves. And then, as I mentioned, you're looking at the tip. Now, again, I'm a bigger fan of using the predicted outcome. So here, I'm just focusing more on the teeth. I always like to say, hey, you can just forget the brackets, turn those off, and get those teeth where you want them. This is interesting too. Check this out. According to the prescription, this is where the offset's going to end up. Based on the prescription, based on how much force is applied within those slots and wires, these are your offsets. I think that's so cool that we can predict that. Okay, that's kind of easiest way to approve a case. Check marginal ridges, adjust if you need to rotation and tip, and then do your leveling options. Get those teeth nice and level with your heights. Okay, those are those. Now, I want to talk about, I thought I had those in quotes, is I want to do a next level approval with you guys. What's my next slide here? Yeah, here we go. Next level approvals. If you take into consideration, let's get our brackets back on here. I'm going to undo if it'll let me. No, I can't do the undo to get my bite, but I can come back into heights. I don't like where it is up there for some reason. I'm just going to go back to our standard 4.5, 4.5. Load that again. Okay, so next level approvals. Why do I want to show this? This means why are you telling me this? That means I have to spend even more time in the software. Well, give me a second here, and hopefully it'll make sense to you why I think you should use the full capability and predictive power with the software, because it pays dividends down the roads to decrease those rebonds, to decrease wire bendings. If you fully use and spend a few more minutes within the software, it pays dividends down the roads or down the road. Okay, so collisions and gaps. I'm going to turn off that grid. And if you look at this, it looks pretty good, right? We've got a decent class 1. That did not give me back my did I do that wrong? Maybe I never loaded it. Oops. You have to be careful, never hit the save, because it's going to save. You always want to hit load. Let's hit load and see if we can get that back somewhat normal to where I had it. Yeah, that looks a little bit better for what I want. Anyway, overall, looks pretty decent. We're heavy on those marginal ridges, but even something like that, I'm like, I could bring that down a little bit. I was on 0.01 for linear movements. You really can go down a rabbit hole, but I can pull that down a little bit if I wanted to, if I wanted those marginal ridges from the buckle side to look pretty good. But what's next level is if we turn on our occlusal collision, because this is going to change things. So if we look at this like, oh, wow, we could get this better. So what I would do here in this situation is I could click these 3 bottom tees. I'm going to do, each time I click, it's 1/10 of a millimeter, bring those up a little bit closer, click on those and bring those down. Now, as I bring the teeth down, what does that do? It's repositioning the bracket to a better position. So this is good. Between the 5s, I've got some occlusion now. You want to see blue. If you see a little yellow, that's fine. You start getting to the red, you want to do some adjusting. So what's now, I'm going to click on that lower 4, move that up with a couple clicks. Sorry, yeah, upper 4, bring that down. And there we go. I'm going to play with our molars here. Now I'm starting to get some occlusion. Now we get to have some fun, because now I can play a little, if I wanted to get really down the rabbit hole, I can change the tip a little bit to get better contacts between those teeth. Now they're not touching again. Okay, so move them up. Oops, wrong direction. Yeah, see, this is why you can't call me an expert. I've been hitting my tip instead of my up and down, which is something, there's another little trick in here with the software. You can customize just a little bit your brackets by increasing a little bit of gap between the bracket pad and that tooth. So now that I have that, though, I can bring that down. There we go, a little bit better contacts there. So now here I'm hitting really hard. I can bring that down. If we turn on the wire, oops, what am I doing here? There we go. I can simulate a wire bend as well. So now that's not hitting near as bad. All this stuff, the amount of control you have before you put on a single bracket is really, really neat. So now over here, I'd want to bring these down a couple of 2/10. Oops. A little bit better. Maybe 2 more clicks, so 2/10 again. And I'm happy with that. Bring that down a little bit so there's no red. Oops, wrong direction. No, I did do that right. There we go. So by getting it into a good ideal bite, into a class 1, and then turning on the sort of collisions map, I did all these adjustment of the teeth. Those brackets now are in a really much better position. So our heights are good, our occlusion's good, our contacts are good. that's what I'm referring to when I say next level. And I understand that's not for everybody. If you're new and to DIBS, I recommend that first approach that I mentioned earlier. Look at the margin ridges, look at your rotations and your tip and your leveling, and you're done. If you want really good dividends down the road, you want to look at those collisions and gaps. Now, the cool thing here, this is the one thing you remember from this little lecture, is everything I just showed you in terms of the getting into a better bite, in terms of adjusting those teeth. Behind the scenes, we are working very hard with our machine learning for next level stuff. That stuff should be automated. Next level after that is getting the automation based on your preferences. Right now, you need a human. Like the AI speeds us up. Our old days before DIBS AI, there was DIBS. In DIBS, our technicians would spend at least a couple hours doing case setups. To have that down to about 12 to 15 minutes is huge. But we think as we continue to scale as a company, we need to get those minutes down, and we need to improve the setups so that you are not having to spend forever in the software. So right now, yeah, if you want that next level stuff, you have to learn a bit more in the software to get that next level positioning of the brackets. But what I'm super excited about in the future is we can automate a lot of this stuff. Let's look at bracket collisions. We're almost done here. Actually, yeah, I got to go faster because I just eat, sleep, and drink this stuff, guys, and I could talk about this all day long, and we're already at 41 minutes in. But let me show you a couple more things here, because again, the power of the software is just amazing. Let's come back to the existing mode or pre-treatment, and let's turn on bracket collisions. Now, in this case, there's only one, but if you have a really deep bite, you can come in here. I'm going to come into the bite, and I'm going to open this up. And now it's not hitting, but I'm going to get that open, just a few more clicks. And now we can add turbos, occlusal stops, whatever you want to do. They're there. You can make them as big or as small as you want, put them wherever you want. We can turn these into more squares and make those as big or as small as we want. And those are incorporated into the tray. And there is definitely a fairly decent learning curve on getting these down, but we have doctors that absolutely love this and swear by them, that they can fill those in and not have to be in the patient's mouth, building those up, carving them down. It's a huge time saver. There's other things that we could get into, but I've got to wrap up because I want to open this up to questions. There's powerful tools here to know if you need to extract. Should you expand? Do you need IPR? I want another case. You can see on this image, this is what I'm working on now with a company called Relu, based out of Denmark. They have powerful technology in my mind, where they're able to take, if you have a CBCT scanner, take those cone beams and get all this wonderful data, and we're integrating that into DIBS. I hope to have this ready by AAO. Don't quote me on that. Right now in DIBS, you can very manually add roots. Our latest one, you can start to add jaw bones, but the whole kit and caboodle to get that automated and have an API with Relu, we're working hard on that, but that's really next level stuff. I've looked at setups and you think, hey, that looks really good. You turn on the roots and all of a sudden you're like, whoa. Again, you guys have the panos, which help, but if you can actually have the roots in the software as you're adjusting brackets, it's, again, that phrase I keep using of next level. But again, the precision and the control and the predictability is very accurate, but it's different. When you're used to seeing things in pre-treatment, well, we're going to post-treatment and looking at where the teeth end up, brackets are going to look different. But what I suggest is please do a couple cases. I don't know, Ryan, how many times we've had doctors, they'll do 3 or 4 or 10 cases, and then we don't hear from them for 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 months because they want to see how those cases track. And we always like, wow, this is amazing. This is really good. This is saving time. This is making me more efficient. So you don't have to take my word for it. If you go by our methodology and those assumptions and use whatever height presets you want, you get amazing control. Oh, I showed you briefly how I could simulate a wire bend. There is a chart in there that shows you. So later on, when you get to your finishing wire, you know how many degrees to bend that wire based on what you did in the software. There's also jig trays, which is a new thing that's in our software. There's just always a lot going on behind the scenes and getting that stuff done. So keys of success, learn the software. Yeah, all those guidelines of clinical procedures. There is a learning curve. If things go wrong, don't stop. Talk with us. We're happy to troubleshoot and help you. And a big one is getting your staff on board. We've signed up doctors and the staff doesn't know, and all of a sudden you're doing an indirect bonding for the first time. They're not going to like you. The other thing is, don't dip your foot in the pool. You got to jump in. You can play with it here and there, but to get pretty proficient in the software, you almost just got to jump on the deep end and start doing it. I'll end with this, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Ryan. I'm proud of our team. This is I'm pulling back the curtain, and you're seeing what we did just last August. We had 4,000 submissions. 96% of those were completed. This is all time. This is from basically the last almost 3 years. We're coming up on almost 70,000 completed. In fact, I took the screenshot about a week or so ago. We've probably already passed.
We are
70. Okay, you looking at the numbers?
Yeah,
that's a huge milestone.
Yep.
So we're averaging 4,000 completions a month right now, and I have this one here. And this is not me. I have a fantastic team, from the developers to our technicians to our customer success team who are eager and out there to help you guys. It's pretty phenomenal growth, and I'm going to brag on them. So this was July of this year. We hit almost 4,200 cases. September, we always dip. When the kids get back in school, we have a dip. And then October, we just finished, and we're right back at 4,000. And we have a huge jump come January, the insurance resets and all that kind of fun stuff. So, yeah, I think that's it for now. Ryan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve. So we do have a few questions. So Steve, can you click on the Q&A button on your Zoom, and you might be able to see these yourself?
Q&A button.
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Help. Oh, there it is. There we go.
Click on that. That should pop up a little window.
Yep, I see that here.
We've got a few questions about bite ramps. Dr. Couture has a question there.
A way to make it like a twin block. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I mean, there is where the software is now and where it will be. Those, you can call it a occlusal collision, bite turbos, bite ramps. There's never a shortage of new tasks or functionality to develop. And this is one of them. It is on the roadmap. I cannot give you a timeline yet, but we want to revisit that, because we've had doctors say, hey, I want more than 2 dots. I want 4, or I want 4 rectangles. And you can change those shapes all day long. So yeah, for class 2, class 3, it's on the roadmap. It is coming. I wish I could tell you we'll have that by AAO, but if more people want that, we can move it up the priority list, because honestly, we have probably 100 other functions and features we could add. So I like that, but thank you for asking. And I've got to think about that now, right? Do we want to move that up?
Yeah. A related question on bite turbos is the next one from Nathan Helm.
Are the size and shape of
if the sizing is determined by the AI? It's not currently.
No, it's not. That one's fully manual. I can demonstrate that super quick, because that is an important question. What you want to do is turn your mullet around to right here and zoom in here. And I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Use your pan. And this is where you got to practice and bring that down so it's touching now those lower incisors. Bring that down. Maybe bring that out a little bit. There you go. And you can make them wider however you want, and you can tilt it. So you talk about those ramps, you can kind of put these at different angles as whoops. Got to be careful though, because if you move them, yeah, lots of capability, but it's fully manual for now. But yes, we got to automate that. We want to save you guys time and not have to spend all this time on the software. So, okay.
Dr. Poisson had a question about linear movement and rotational movement.
Sure. So linear would be straight up and down from gingival to incisal, or if you want to go mesial to distal. Those are all your linear movements. And then in terms of, you have degrees, right? So you have your tip. That's sort of it's funny the word rotation is used, because rotation has a very specific meaning, but then tip torque and rotation are all a form of rotation. But that would be, your tip there. Again, that's your rotation. What else did he say on there? Yeah, that's rotational movement.
Yeah, linear and rotational movement.
But there's also this rotation, right? Where I can come from this view and now I'm kind of rotating it that way. So I'm not sure which one he means. Rotation generic or rotation as in this is rotating of brackets.
I guess the point, Dr. Poisson, is options, right? You can do that. Dr. Couture, in your questions, the mirror occlusal view, as I recall, Steve, that is on our list as well. Add a fefeature
Mirror occlusion.
Yeah.
Oh, the mirror, yeah. Clearly, this good doctor is used Light Force. We love Flight Light Force. They're amazing company. They've got a lot of bells and whistles in there. Little bit different philosophy between what we've done and what Light Force has done. Light Force has done a fantastic job raising a ton of money. We have done it more from our own funding, and so we fund our development. So we're young and we're scrappy and we're quick, but we also don't have tens of millions. But that is one cool feature I know that Light Force has, is you can mirror some of those occlusal views. If I'm understanding that correctly, if you guys can add a feature of seeing the brackets from a mirror occlusal view, I'm not sure on that one. We might have to stay on afterwards. I do know in the software you can mirror adjustments. So where is that, Brittany? We've got one where you can turn on, mirror bracket height. I don't think that's what you're asking. But if I turn that on, you'll notice as I move up that 4 and down, you can see it also happening on the other side, which would help with if you're going to change the heights. But yeah, I need to find out more on that. Good questions, though. What is the best clinical way?
And actually, Ahmad, on the clinical way, let's address that in your training and onboarding, because there are best practices for putting cement on the bracket bases, and limiting your
Ryan, we should do a whole nother webinar lecture on the clinical side, because today is obviously we're doing a lot in the software side of things. But yeah, that's a whole nother side of the equation, is the clinical side.
Dahlia has a question about predicting the right prescription to use, which is a cool question.
Are you under where are you at? Can you read it to me? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, can the software predict the right prescription to use? It's a little.
No, it's the other way around. It's what is your prescription of the brackets you're using, and you can go from there. So it accurately predicts what prescription is built into the bracket. Now you can switch to other brackets. I over here under bracket library, depending on what you have. I mean, I have a ton in here. I have a lot of the big ones. So if I want to mix and match and change to different prescriptions, it's going to show you where those teeth are going to end up. So I think the answer there is yes.
Yeah, actually, and Steve, if you can plop the wire in there, and I don't know if it shows a wire bend example on your case there, but if you put the wire in, it does predict the wire bending, which could affect your decision on your bracket prescription.
Yeah. And so I want to show this too. We could do such a deep dive on so much of this stuff. Is I can change what my wire size is. So let's go up a little bit bigger, say a 1725. That's going to change the inclination, because there's less gripping going on in there. I think that was a 16 before. We even, if you can get it from the manufacturer, what's your corner radius of your finishing wires? Because that can affect the torque as well. So yeah, really good stuff in here.
Brian Wild, I submitted my first case this week. It was tricky to get the torques right. Is it easier to add composite to change the base or simulate wire bends? Prefers not to bend.
So from his very first case, he is already going down that next level stuff and adjusting his torque.
Yeah. He does say maybe I need to add to my selection of brackets with different molar tubes.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had doctors that when they look at the prediction, they're like, oh, wow, particularly from the rotation or from the occlusal view. And you see some of that built-in overcorrection, or just some of those brackets, they're I'm not using the right term, but they're much thicker in the distal, and so they rotate in those molars. And you may or may not want that, but I know we've had quite a few doctors that like to experiment and use different molar tubes and on those back molars to see what it's going to look like end of treatment. But back to that question, is it better to simulate wire bend or to kind of customize the prescription of the bracket? What that means, though, and I hesitate even bringing it up, but you can customize your prescription in terms of torque a little bit. In fact, I've got it. I'm assuming you can still see this on my screen.
Yeah.
Oops. Let's say, okay, that's what the torque is based on the prescription. I think it's shift. Yeah. See how I'm obviously changing the torque of this tooth, but now I've created a huge gap. So this is another tip and trick that some doctors use. You would have to fill that in with more composite. And now you've effectively changed the torque, built-in torque prescription of that bracket. You got to be careful here, though, because the further away from the tooth that you get, the more a chance you have of a debond. So to answer the question, if it's anterior teeth, I mean, my recommendation is go ahead and simulate the wire bending. Posterior, though, it's pretty hard to get back there and do wire bends, and who wants to do them? Torque bends. So maybe consider doing just a little bit of this customization. I call it like a torque gap. How you do all this, I use keyboard shortcuts all day long because it really speeds things up. But how you do all that's another one where you can, you can just create a calendar event with our staff, and they can show you how to do all this kind of fun stuff. Next question. Hopefully I answered that well. Use both wire bending and customization of the prescription. Just be careful.
Yes. Extremely rotated teeth. How do you suggest we handle that where you just cannot get the bracket in the right place?
Yeah. That's going to be a planned repo. Am I in a version to show this to you? So one of the, I hate to kick the can down the road. That's why I say there's no shortage of features. One of the things I'm super excited about, so I'm glad you asked this question, is right now we obviously are making a transfer tray or an IDB tray based on when you bond. It has to be based on pre-treatment or where the teeth are now. On our roadmap as well, this one I do hope to have by AAO is we can make individual jigs for those teeth that are severely rotated and you can't get to them. So you just put them as best you can in the original tray when you bond. But then down the road, once that tooth is rotated enough, you can then use that individual jig to bond that tooth. For now, this is where I always say, hey, you have skills of orthodontists. You have both brackets on either side of that tooth. It's a much easier direct bond an individual tooth when you have the other two brackets next to it. An individual tooth. So for now, again, we don't have all the bells and whistles of, say, like a Light Force, but we're also not charging you $1,000 a case. But that's the great thing is we get some of these other functionalities in there. We have no plans of raising our prices anytime soon. So huge value in there. Good question. I'll again say that's coming.
Awesome. One more question, Steve, and then we probably should end. With extraction cases, will the option of removing the tooth in the software to expose the bonding surface or the bracket collision to accurately place the brackets? I'm not sure if I understand the question on my side.
Will the option of removing the tooth in the software to expose the bonding surface? Yeah, I'm a little lost because if you've extracted the tooth, how are you exposing the bonding surface to accurately place the bracket? Chris, if you're able to maybe write in and Ryan, is it possible we could end, but a few people, if they want to stand on, and we can turn on microphones and answer some of these, and we could give that to Chris first?
Sure.
Maybe clarify that.
Sure. Let's see, real quick, I'll answer a couple of questions here. Mike Wagner, question about segmenting the trays. If you are printing in office, you are welcome to segment the trays however you like. Theoretically, you could segment each tooth and make its own jig. In our lab, for the scaling we do at the volume we do, we've standardized on sextants. So an anterior tray and two posterior trays, usually divided between the 3 and the 4.
And this comes back to preferences. And the reason we do that is just it's easier to get the trays off. when you do a whole tray or even a half a tray, yeah, that works. You'd think it saves you time. Maybe it would, but it's a little bit harder to get the tray off because you're tugging and pulling, on that facial buccal area, trying to release that before you remove the whole tray. We just feel it's easier to manage those sextants rather than halves.
Yep.
But if you are printing in Office, and that is, we are open source to so many things. One of them is you can print your own trays. You can cut them up as much as you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So that concludes our time, everyone. Steve and I will stay on. There's a couple more questions we'd like to handle, but just so we're up front with you, our hour is up. We're extremely grateful for you to being here. Thank you, and we will be communicating a recorded version of this as well, so you can come back and review some of the information you learned from Steve today. Thank you again. Thank you to AO as well for their assistance and sponsorship. And with that, let's continue on to a couple more questions here, Steve.
Yeah. So if you need to jump off, you can jump off. But let's finish these up, and then we'll turn off the microphones for some of these ones.
Perfect. So Dr. Panchura has a question about flipping anterior brackets.
I'll go ahead and read it. We often flip anterior brackets. Yep. Either cuspid to cuspid or just a single tooth, usually a lateral, and aid uprighting crowns or roots, but clearly don't end up with negative torque on the anterior tooth, nor the 22-degree difference between the central and lateral. How does AI interpret that? Yeah, that's a great question. That comes to, again, that comes to your finishing wire size. If it's a smaller wire, it's not going to engage. It's just going to be slop. If there's slop, it's not going to change it. It kind of depends on a lot of factors there, but in some instances, I think you would see that. But if you zoom in on your software, I think I'm still showing you the screen. I really would like to see if you're in a finishing wire, Dr. Panchira, and see what's happening there. But again, it's going to interpret it if there's a force between the slot and the wire. If there's no force interaction between those two because there's too much slop, then there won't be any change in the torque. Hopefully that answers that. But again, we can open up microphones and delve into that a little bit deeper.
Let's see.
Oh, I believe he means if the adjustment tooth is severely rotated. Yeah, with the extracted tooth case not removed, the bracket placement adjustment to this tooth is in the way of the accurate placement. Oh, yeah. This comes back to, look, if you've got severe crowding, we know you can't get all brackets in the ultimate place from the very beginning. This also comes back to maybe if you want midterm treatments or midterm corrections or whatnot. But I think the best thing is if we can make a jig based on start with the end in mind, we get that bracket on the right spot. Later on, you can print those and bond those. I hope that answers that question.
I think so. Steve, how do you invert brackets in the software?
Oh, sure. Let's show that. Well, the easy answer is you have to prepare for it. So let's say I'm going to right click, hold down my shift key and right click again on those lower incisors. Let's close that, turn off that. Under bracket library, whatever your brackets are, let's go back up here. Let's say you're using AO, Mini Master, or Empower 2 or whatever. You will need a library that will say Mini Master inverted, and then it'll say like lower 2 to 2. So that's something we need to work with you beforehand. That's not something you can just magically do in the software. The reason why is because we need to recalibrate these brackets to be inverted. And the reason behind that is, let's say I took this and I could literally just do a 180 on that. Let's see, is it this one? Getting my buttons missed. Oh, let's go to pre-treatment. If I come here and I rotate, that's taking forever. Let's do it this way. Come to 0.5. And let's rotate. Oops. I want tip. There we go. Well, it's wanting to go off the tooth there, isn't it? I've got a little bug. This is another reason why you shouldn't do it this way. We have to change the XYZ axis of each bracket. If you, I know the software can do it, but I obviously got a bug in this version. You can in the software do a 180, but then the software can't make the tray because it knows the XYZ, the incisal edge of the bracket is the incisal edge. The gingival is where it's going to cut it off when it auto generates the tray. If you flip that around, it basically breaks the software. So we actually have to do that beforehand, calibrate those, change the XYZ and flip those around. Then you would come in here into your library. I don't think I have an inverted set in here. And you would click on that same bracket set. But it would say the word inverted. That's how we handle inverting brackets. Hopefully I answered that okay. Brittany's on here saying, so I could have answered that so much better. I do that all day long.
We got Steve, we got a couple of questions about the segmentation. We had a question earlier, can we segment differently? Dr. Dennis Flanagan feels like quadrants are easier. And so Dr. Flanagan, let's address that. There are always doctor preferences, and we recognize that. In fact, Dr. Ed Lynn just last night was doing a webinar, and I think one of the images Steve used actually was quadrants. He prints in office and he prefers quadrants as well. So we totally get that. That is a preference. We've settled on sextants to standardize in order to meet our speed. We're trying to deliver things in 5 business days or less. So we standardized on sextants. The reason we did, there's manufacturing reasons, which we won't go into, but from a clinical perspective, we found in most cases, not all, but in most cases, clinicians preferred sextants because they didn't have to maintain moisture control in the posteriors as long. They could do that quicker with a smaller tray. They're just bonding a few teeth in the posterior. And then the anterior, when they're all shaped the same, it's a little easier to control flash with a single tray in the anterior where all the teeth are kind of a little more flatter on the surface. You don't have to put as much adhesive on the bracket pad, things like that to help. Smaller trays also maintain the warmth from the light curing unit. So that makes them a little more flexible and softer to remove because that heat helps them be flexible. So there's a few of the reasons. We recognize that doesn't work for everybody. But I don't know if there's more you'd like to add to that, Steve.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. And the other big thing is this comes back to options. And that's, I'm all about automation. And now the next step is customizing that automation. And so Dr. Flanagan, on that one, you'll see an option soon on your RX form for what we call add-ons. So again, we're doing thousands of cases. In fact, we average 1,000 cases a week right now. That's a lot of cases. We have 60 employees. About 40 of those are technicians. To have only 40 people doing 1,000 cases a week is huge. One of the reasons we can do that is we have to standardize to a degree, especially at the price point that we're at. Again, we're not a light force charging 1,000. We're at 165 max. And so to do that, if you get in the weeds, a technician would have to stop every time they're about to generate a tray to read the doctor's preferences. Whereas if we have a standardized, we're going to do it in sextants, get it printed, get it shipped, and on to the next case, we kind of have to standardize things. But down the road, as we continue to grow, we know doctors want to customize these things. So as we get our automation and we're customizing that automation, that's an option we can give you, or we have to hire more technicians and slow them down, but then we'd have to charge more. So I would like to know if Dr. Flanagan can write in there, would he be interested to pay a little bit more if we want to have some of these customizations where it's going to take a technician a little bit longer to get this stuff done?
Awesome. We'll let him respond.
I'm amazed we still got most people with us. This is good. Let's keep going. Again, he drop off anytime, but let's keep going through these questions.
Is there a way to adjust the bracket contour line, specifically on the vertical? Dr. Petra is asking because sometimes it appears as if the vertical contour line on their lower 6 tubes is offset from where the wire would emerge from the actual tube.
Yeah, let's look at that. It depends maybe on her prescription. But if you look at that, that vertical contour line is connected to the prescription of the bracket. So we've got two things going on here. Let's put on our grid. I'm going to get this bracket. Ignore the tooth for just a second. Let's just look at the bracket prescription. Okay, so let's put it on our red line here. You can see the face of the bracket. I have it parallel with this vertical line. That long axis is perpendicular to it. And she might want it to be, instead of perpendicular to the slot, being perpendicular to the pad or the base. We used to do that, but we got a lot of complaints because then the vertical line would kind of be going across that way instead of straight across, perpendicular to the slot from this angle. And then of course, if I move this bracket around, it's moving that contour line. So can you move contour lines? Yes, but they are stuck perpendicular and parallel to the bracket, depending on the angle you're looking at. Ryan, do you have the ability to turn off individual microphones, or just open it up and she can actually follow up on that question? So just maybe open up all the microphones, but then Dr. Who I've already scrolled down. Where was that question?
Petra, you are live.
Hi there.
Hi.
So actually I was referring to if you're looking from a facial view.
From here.
Yep. And so we do use a little bit at the university where I teach, we use a little bit bulkier lower 6 brackets. So sometimes that red contour line looks like it's slightly higher in a lower bracket. For example, here it would be low, it would be more occlusal. So from where you would imagine the wire to emerge. So if you think about, like, say, a convertible bracket, it's a little bit bigger. So that red line kind of looks offset from where the wire would come out of the tube. So I'm wondering if we can adjust that part.
There's not a way to adjust it other than just moving the bracket. Now we could, I've got my mirror still on there. We could adjust it, but it's that contour line is connected to the bracket. And we could change sort of the XYZ of the bracket. That would change the contour lines. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple of snapshots, because I'm honestly, I'm having a little bit a hard time trying to visualize what you're talking about, because they should line up. That red line should perfectly line up with your finishing wire. So if I come in here, if I turn that arch wire on and off, you can see it's completely parallel, but maybe I've got to have the right bracket on there to see what you're referring to. Would you mind doing that? Send us a couple screenshots.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And then I can respond to that to an email. Okay, great. Next question, Ryan. I just want to mention too, Brittany, she's a presenter, right? Can she unmic if she wants to or needs to? Because Brittany does this all day long too. So feel free to jump in, Brittany, if you've got anything to add to it, to any of these questions.
Yep. Oh, okay, will do.
And Josh, I see Josh is on here too. Both of them are kind of our resident experts with customer service. Go ahead, Ryan.
So Marley Ring asks, we find quite often when there are very rotated teeth, the trays tend to get stuck between the brackets or between teeth and are hard to remove. Is there an option to have areas blocked out so the tray isn't sucked in as much and is easier to remove to avoid tearing trays?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this comes back to customization. And this is why we're open source too. We have maybe 20, 30, 35% of doctors printing in-house, Ryan. If you're printing in-house, you do have that ability to sort of try to cut things out, but it takes a lot of time. But this again comes back to as well, never-ending software development, because how cool would it be if we had some ways to just go in there and block out something, like particularly recessed gums as well, or severely rotated teeth, as she's saying, with its crowding. It can be tough sometimes in those situations. We don't have the ability to do that unless a technician spends a long time just kind of cutting out and filling those back in so they're not so deep. So it is possible in the software if you are printing in office, you have that option, but that's something we don't offer currently.
Awesome. One more question, Steve. So Dan Stewart feels like the segmentation of the teeth do not match what he sees clinically. He says, I bond quite gingivally and consistently see the teeth are trimmed short.
Trimmed short. I'm assuming he feels like the brackets are too gingival. So earlier in the presentation, we went incisal. We hear about a lot of incisal. If he's feeling they're too gingival, if I'm reading that correctly.
And we can't ask him. He's exited.
Did he drop off?
Oh, sorry about that.
The segmentation of the teeth. Is he talking about the segmentation of the tray once placed over the teeth?
No, I think he's actually talking about the scans. And I did a little spot check on some of his cases, and I think it may have to do with the quality of the scan. So I'm going to reach out to him.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that was the one assumption I did in the very beginning is we need good scans. If the scans are bad, it ripples all the way down through treatment, unfortunately.
Awesome.
He says the teeth are shorter on the digital setup than the clinical. I would love to verify that because in the software, we've got a measuring tool. We can measure it in there, and then you can obviously measure it in the real world. I'd love to see that. Part of it is just when we segment the teeth, are the segmentations going all the way up to the gingival line? I love this stuff. I just need to see it. Like take screenshots, show it, send us measurements. But I mean, bottom line, I want people to ask these questions and figure them out, but please know this. We know this works. We're doing, like I say, thousands of cases a month, and we can work this stuff out. So great question.
Good. Yep. Let's see. Christian's helping out there.
Not pushing the tray all the way. Yeah, that's another one. You got to make sure that the tray is seated all the way down. And this is, again, why we need to do another webinar on the clinical side, because there are some tips and tricks there. You don't want to put too much pressure. Like if you have your thumb on a posterior piece and you're kind of on that between the occlusal and the buccal, and you're pushing and then you're bonding, you can bond those brackets to gingival. At the same time, if you don't have it seated all the way, it could bond a little to incisal. So yeah, there's some tips and tricks on that clinical side. Thanks,
Okay.
Christian. I think that's
perfect.
One more. Hey, we can go all day, guys. We still got 71 people on here. You guys are driving this. We can stay as long as you want.
Have we found issues with bracket slots being inconsistent from one bracket to another due to manufacturing or any other?
Yes. Please, for the love, do not buy the cheapest bracket you can find on Alibaba, because the tolerances and the variances in those slots are terrible. That quote that I read earlier from McLaughlin and Bennett is part of your assumption to get, for cases to track well and to have good outcomes, is you need a precision bracket. And we do. We early days, we did a lot of CB, it is a CB. What's the name of our thing? Oh, CT scanner. It's an industrial CT scanner. We scan those brackets down to a micron, and we definitely can see the variance from slot to slot. Having said that, though, I mean, most brackets out there are pretty good and do a good job. But yeah, don't get crappy brackets. Top 5 quality bracket. Those ones are pretty good. Like there's always going to be a variance in tolerance in manufacturing, but top 5 quality twin brackets, you shouldn't see a lot of change. Maybe a bracket's was got through QA, and maybe a pad wasn't fused with the bracket perfectly. I'm not sure, but we don't see too much of that I'm aware of.
So Brian, I'm going to turn on you are now live.
Did that answer your question, Dr. Wild? He might not have a mic.
Dr. Flanagan, I'm also going to turn you on live as well. You have some questions there. Oh, Dr. Wild is actually wanting us to recommend which twins we recommend. Yeah, Brian, we'd probably just stick with your bigger brands. We're kind of bracket agnostic, and So your AO, your GC, your Pitts, your Dynaflex, your Norris. Who am I missing?
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
You've got Ormco, you've got
Yeah.
3M.
Yeah. They're all those are all, as far as we're concerned in our role, we are able to accurately predict with any of those bracket brands.
Yeah. And they're good. Just the cheaper the bracket though, sometimes it's you are missing out on those
Yeah, it's the Alibaba ones that you're
And we have doctors that do that. It's funny. They want to be next level advanced, get great bracket placement, but the predictability kind of goes out the door if you're using a cheap bracket.
Dr. Flanagan, you should be live.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Did you want me to speak to something in particular?
Well,
just
you
put your
wrote
question
here,
about
gingival marginal height in the software is a little higher. Look, all this stuff can be verified. Like I can show you here. Now we typically aren't looking at okay, gingival. Are you talking about the marginal ridges? Or are you talking about
the height of the gingival margin. So what I have noticed, and it's probably just a little thing with the software, is sometimes the height of the gingival margin is sitting higher on the tooth in the software than it is interorally. And I know, and I've noticed this because when I look in the mouth, because I've been playing with positioning the brackets, and I know I can cheat that bracket gingivally some because you have the sulcus and the gingiva will give when you push that, when you seat that tray along with the tray and the bracket, it's going to push that gingiva down a little bit. So I've been playing a little bit with how far I can cheat that. And I just noticed that at times where I'm doing that specifically, I can see there's more distance between the gingival part of the bracket base and the gingival margin than what I was seeing in the software. And that, again, that just may be the way the software is. And
no, it should be very, very accurate. It should translate over. So if you see, I'm still sharing my screen, right, Ryan? You can see this?
Yeah.
If you're able to take a pretty good, just take a shot of it. I've done this a few times. I can take an image and I can measure and find out the resolution of a bracket. And then in DIBS, I can rotate it around and match that resolution and then superimpose them to see if there are, if they're not matching up, if there's an offset. And so we hear this from doctors, but I just need proof. Like, send us images, send us something so we can validate and see. Because is it a problem in the software? Or is it on the clinical side? Was there a problem with the tray, or was it pushed up or not pushed on all the way? There's a few variables we want to check, but that's where we want to start.
I'll tell you this for background. I started my residency in '93, and I started doing indirect bonding in '93. So it's not new to me.
Sure.
As far as the technique in the mouth and in the indirect bonding and all that. So, and making sure a tray is seated.
It is different though. If I could, I'll push back a little bit on that, because the doctors that do have quite a bit of experience with indirect bonding, it depends on the type, because a 3D printed indirect bonding tray its properties are different than, say, the vacuum form ones where you have a double layer. And so it's, you want it on there nice and tight, and it should be nice and snug. But yeah, and look, it's not rocket science. You don't want to push up too high, but you also want it seated all the way. So anyway, we've had a lot of doctors like, they just wing it, right? They're not following our recommendations, and then things go south, and it's our fault. So if you're using our recommendations and you feel really confident on that, then next step, I'd love to see some images, and then we can kind of compare it to what the software shows.
If I can, I'll try and get some for you. I would
super appreciate it.
Can I just say one more thing about the sectioning and the sextants?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what I have found with that is, you guys, and you might have seen in my comment, when you guys section that, you're making a cut between the two. So what I have found is that that is such a tight fit between those tray sections that it can cause some issues with getting those trays to seat all the way
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So when I section mine, what I do is I take a little slice off of one tray or the other to make a little clearance in between those two trays, and then I have no problem with those trays seating next to each other. Because what I do when I have you guys print the trays in the sextants is I'll do the two posterior trays, I'll remove them, and then do the anterior tray, so I have no issues with
exactly.
interference.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
exactly how it should be done.
We recommend that too. So 2
Okay.
points. I like what you just said, and that's a tweak we need to make in the software.
I guess I hadn't seen that with the in my training with taking the posterior off and then seating the
Oh,
anterior.
well,
Maybe I just don't remember that.
Brittany and Josh, we're going to have words because we don't want you to put all the sextants on all at one time. We want you to bond one, pull it off, go to the next section. But to your point, we could do that on software. So it digitally just makes a cut. And I think the cut is maybe 0.2 of a millimeter. From your feedback, that makes sense, is we just need to widen that cut.
Yeah,
make it 3 or 4 1/2 a millimeter, because you've got quite a bit of space usually between that cuspid and bicuspid. It's not like you're slicing. That's the other reason why we don't cut in quadrinks. To cut in between the lower incisors is really, particularly if they're rotated in towards each other, it's a really thin cut. And that happens a lot on those lower trays. That's why we went to the sextant. But
yeah, and that's
feedback.
That's when you have to use your experience, and instead of cutting it between those two rotated centrals, you go through go in between the central and the lateral, or that to do it. So, but yeah, if you could set up the software where it makes that cut a little wider, I think that would be great.
It's good. I still would say I think it's better to bond in those individual sections, only because the trays are heat sensitive by design. You'll notice when you put on a tray, it's usually a bit more stiff, but by the time you've light cured it, it should be more flexible and you pull it off. Now, another little tip and trick, if you have a high curve of SPI, that means that tray is going to be thicker. And if it's been out shipping and it's been in cold weather, that tray is going to be quite rigid. So that's why we give everyone a little tray warmer. So the light curing unit doesn't always fully soften enough to be able to pull that thing off easily. So just blow a little warm air back and forth on those sections, particularly if it's cold weather and it's got a high curve of SPI. That means it's a thick tray. That'll make it easier to pull that tray off. But anyway, that's why we recommend doing them individually, just because it's easier to get them off when they're warm.
Have any of you guys actually tried handling that posterior segment of a tray for the lower arch with a NOLA type suction in there, and in someone with a small tight mouth?
It's tough.
It's not easy. Well, that's why you see in our trays, if we do it, we cut out the buckle side, usually from the middle of the 4 across the 6 and 7, so that you don't have to take out that tongue guard. You mean
the lingual?
Got the lingual, yes.
Lingual, yes,
Definitely not cutting out the buckle. Cutting out that lingual side, so it's a little bit easier to get those sections in.
It's challenging to get that, to hold that lower one. I use a pair of Weingart pliers to place that when I do.
Any suggestions? Would you want? I fear cutting out more on that lingual side, because then maybe we lose some stability.
No, it's not that. It's just some mouths. It's just there's not a lot of room, and those trays can be bulky sometimes, and it's hard to get. And I have small hands and fingers, and it's just hard to get your finger and your thumb on that and place that back there with that suction in there. I use a pair of pliers. Grab it on the buckle and lingual of the tray and seat it down, and then I can use the plier to go on the occlusal and make sure that tray is seated down.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of doctors who have done a lot more DIBS bondings than I have, but it's just what in the past, since May, I've done 92 of them. And those are just little things that I've found with it.
That's good. Those are good suggestions. I'm glad we still have 61 participants still with us. So that's great. But the other thing too, is I'd love to get a community going. We have so many fabulous orthodontists that have been using us for years. And, they're willing to take calls, and you guys can kind of swap stories and what works best for you. I mean, Ed Lynn, as a single practice, I think he's done the most, over 2,000 cases, but we also have some DSOs and some partnerships that have just done thousands and thousands. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. And it'd be so cool to have some sort of DIBS AI community. I think there is some chats on Facebook that we're not privy to because we're not orthodontists, and hopefully there's good tips and tricks out there too.
And Dennis, you can see on the Q&A, Dr. Rodriguez, his comment there about what he does. He uses a handle, or the mouth mirror handle to push down, hold that tray in. So yeah, good suggestions, good feedback, guys.
Let's
Let's
keep going.
see.
We got a couple more questions.
No, we've got those handled. I just need to mark them off the list.
Well, there was one from Christian. Did we do that one? How's the glue or composite is placed?
No, he's messaging for Dennis there.
Oh, okay. That's
Yep.
for him.
How is the glue or composite?
He's referring to your question about gingival.
I'm not quite sure what that question means.
Yeah, I think he's referring to your question earlier about a gingival margin height, and that he's maybe assuming that your trays might be a little bit unseated, or excuse me, your brackets might be a little unseated out of your tray, causing them to be more gingival. I'm assuming maybe that's what Christian means.
Making sure they're sitting down all the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. We need to do this more. That is totally my responsibility. And so we'll make that happen. I'm open, by the ways, if there's other topics. I think a clinical webinar would make sense given some of the questions we saw today. So we will set that up for another time. Feel free to respond to the email invitations and to contact me directly with any questions that you have that are specific for us. And my email is ryanwilliams@myorthoselect.com. And that is it. Have a great day. And next week is Thanksgiving. So have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for your
Everyone.
time.
Thank
so
you.
appreciate it. Bye-bye.